This is where the big boys play, huh? We ain't here to play.
At the total combined weight. At the total combined weight of 589 pounds.
Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, at well over 500 pounds, this is where the big boys play.
All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is At a Combined Weight. I am your host, Charlie Dudley, here with my co-host, Robert McElroy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. June 17th, 1996. Nitro number 40. Let's get into it, my man.
Yeah, June 17th, 1996, post-Great American Bash. Opens with Tony Schiavone pushing the dastardly actions of Hall and Nash. You've got Heenan and Schiavone talking about how Bischoff may have permanent damage throughout the show. You know, Heenan comes in second hour with Schiavone. Schiavone's has to do the whole show now because Bischoff is, out of commission. What did you think about the tone of the way that they started this one?
Well, they couldn't just start off a post-Great American Bash Nitro and not rehash the event some. I thought it was pretty well done. I love that they were showing those stills of the different things that were happening at the Great American Bash. And
yeah, you had talked about the stills when we talked about the Bash.
As a youngster, that's all I had. And here I am like, well, screw that. I get to watch it now. This is fantastic.
All right.
Zbyszko and Schiavone, they could have maybe sold it a little bit more. Like, we have a real problem here.
I thought they did a good job of pushing the fact that stuff had changed. Zbyszko, Schiavone, they pushed the fact that war has been declared. WCW has answered the call of these invaders and are going to name their team tonight. We've got a match set up, lined up, July 7th, Bash at the Beach. I mean, that was their push early in the show, is that these invaders declared war. We're answering the call. War is on.
The morale seems to be high, but you could have sold it even more if, like, there was a downtrodden sense of, we could be up Schitt's Creek without a paddle here.
Right.
But, I mean, how much you try to kayfabe believable little shits like me, I don't know.
Right.
So they set it all up, and they show the stills, and I'm all jubilant that I get to see it all now. Here's to being a network subscriber.
That's right. They run down the happenings at the Bash. Zbyszko shows some love to Mongo for joining the Horsemen. He says he's not going to call him Dumbo anymore because he made a brilliant decision to join the Horsemen. And one thing that I had forgotten about until I rewatched this particular episode is how they pushed the encore presentation. You could buy the pay-per-view on, I guess, Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week. And I don't know if it was the same price or not, but I don't understand why you would do that. They already told you what happened. I don't understand the rub about get the encore, but they pushed it and they had Big Bubba push it later in the show. So, I mean, I guess it's a big deal for them.
I noticed how they rolled tape of the events that happened at the end of the Great American Bash. They showed you how it escalated between Hall, Nash, and Bischoff. But what they didn't show you was the jackknife powerbomb.
Well, yeah, they were going to show that to you in hour two.
Right, which was wise.
Yeah,
I think
it was
from a
really well done.
Standpoint. Yeah.
Well, the show opens with Stevie Ray, Rick Steiner. This is back-to-back Nitros in which we open with the Steiners' Harlem Heat. The go-home show before the Great American Bash saw Booker T and Scott Steiner go head-to-head. Decent match, very short. Booker T comes out, Heat and the Steiners square off. I thought it was really odd the way that Scott Steiner just laid on top of Rick and took the brunt of the attack from Booker T, like, off the top rope. I didn't understand why he didn't just attack Stevie Ray and just kind of end the melee there. What did you think about this?
Well, about that particular happening, I think it spoke to how they are real brothers, Scott and Rick Steiner, and how Scott's gonna do what he can to protect his brother Rick, and it speaks to their babyface ways. I can't really think of too many times ever throughout my childhood watching them as kids when they were ever heels. Here they are, and I'd forgotten all about how Stevie Ray and Booker T, Harlem Heat, had like a heel run during this particular era. My best memories of Harlem Heat were as babyfaces. Not a bad match. Like you say, it was short. I thought the kick from Booker T to Rick Steiner looked good.
Yeah.
I think it had to do with, well, one, the consummate professional that Booker T is, and then two, the camera angle.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was good. It's setting up Steiner's Harlem Heat down the line. As we've talked about on previous shows, WCW's tag team division was really good. And these two teams are the cream of the crop, if you will. And, somebody has to go up against Sting and Luger and get the belts off of them right now. I mean, soon. You've got to think based on how the show pans out, as we move on. Up next, you had Disco Inferno, Joe Gomez. Joe Gomez making his Nitro debut after he was taken out in the backstage area by the Horsemen prior to Great American Bash, where the Horsemen attacked he and Renegade that, kind of pushed the Horseman football deal. I didn't really care for this match that much. Disco Inferno character is booked as kind of a goofball. Gomez gets the win in surprising fashion after Disco puts him out and then dances, and then Joe Gomez gets the win. I mean, it was buffoonery as usual, which is what you're going to have with Disco Inferno up until the point that he starts to make somewhat of a babyface run. Not that terrific of a match. I love how he starts the match. He starts with a promo. Don't you want to watch me dance? Terrible.
Oh, don't you? Don't you want to? And no, there's not a swinging dick in that arena that really wants to watch you dance.
No, none.
So I love how during this match too, I made note that the broadcasters talked about how we're in a state of emergency. We have extra security. I talk a lot about how well they do of selling the outsider storyline. And I love that. As a kid, I can picture, hell, as an adult, I can picture like more boys in blue.
Yeah, we're bolstering security, increasing the security presence. Another thing, I thought Schiavone did a good job twice in this match where he mentions that they received a phone call from Hulk Hogan over the weekend, throwing his name in the hat, kind of pushing that idea that everybody in WCW was rallying together, and also kind of planting that seed as a watcher 20 years later. Like, Hogan's coming through that door at Bash at the Beach. He's coming down that aisle as the third guy. You've got Schiavone and all these people, putting Hogan in the mix to protect WCW. I also thought it was interesting that they were talking about the Horsemen and Mongo and that whole deal. And Schiavone brings up the fact that Joe Gomez is a Bears fan, and that Joe Gomez was disappointed in Mongo for turning on Kevin Green because he thought that he should be a better person than that based on the fact that he was a Bears fan. WCW-esque in that we're going to push something else during an actual match, but we're going to bring, like, hey, this one guy that you don't give a shit about, he's upset at Mongo because he turned on Kevin Green. Because nobody cares about Joe Gomez. I mean, the only people watching the program at the time that cared about Joe Gomez were the Gomez family.
Right.
Or like his girlfriend or friends from wherever he was from. I mean, nobody cared about it. It was his debut, and I just thought it was very amusing that Schiavone kind of infused that into his commentary.
That's funny. I think you would, I guess, chalk something like that up to broadcaster filler. Just a little filler is all. Is the only reason they would ever mention that. Up next, we get a Mean Gene Okerlund segment with Miss Elizabeth, Woman, Deborah McMichael, and Ric Flair, and it starts off with Deborah admitting, look, we did this for the cash. And Flair promos against Macho Man. I have fond memories of these two guys with their feud. I've talked a lot on this podcast about how believable I felt Kevin Sullivan and Benoit's feud was. I felt this one was very believable as well. So when I knew that Flair and Macho Man were getting ready to square off, I was really excited to get to watch that match. And these two would feud for a little while.
Yeah, and if you were a wrestling fan that watched both WWF and WCW, I mean, this is 1996. So in the early 90s, when Flair came over to WWF and he wins the Royal Rumble, becomes the WWF heavyweight champion at the time, you know, he feuds with Macho Man over Elizabeth. And the whole storyline had to do with, you know, Flair had some compromising photos of Elizabeth, which was very, very risque at the time. But, I mean, think about it from a time perspective. I mean, they've been feuding, if you're a wrestling fan, they've been feuding since 1992. And it's 1996. I mean, that's a 4-year-long feud, so that's a slow burn, and they haven't been in the same place at the same time for quite some time. I mean, you know, Macho Man shows up in 1995 in WCW, and then they kind of start things up. So they've been feuding for a long time. It's kind of like that idea as a wrestling fan, these slow builds or these like constant rivalries that you've seen in several different companies that you're like, oh, well, you know, we see it right now. If you're a wrestling fan with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, if you're a longtime wrestling fan, you've seen them feud since ROH. When Steen and El Generico, you know, you saw how they kind of did that. I mean, that's like the modern day equivalent to me. You saw these guys feud in WWF, and now they're in WCW, and they're still feuding. And, I mean, another example of that is when Roddy Piper shows up in WCW. Hogan and him had feuded for thousands of years, it seems. I mean, as long as there's been wrestling, Piper and Hogan have been going at it.
Well, that and just as how WCW got to capitalize on already having these characters packaged and sold, and the fans know their gimmicks, etc.
Right.
Just in that same way, when these two guys kick off a feud, like Piper and Hogan is a brilliant example, the fans already buy in. Also, during this segment with Gene, I love how disgusted Mean Gene seemed over Deborah McMichael. I can't believe you would do such a thing in this particular match. And it just throughout the whole segment, even toward the end, he just kind of
buries her the whole time.
Oh, he judged the hell out of her for it. I thought that was pretty funny.
The Flair promo leads into Arn and Benoit versus the American Males. Decent back and forth match. The American Males worked as baby faces, but never really got a babyface reaction. And this is in Richmond, Virginia. So the Horsemen, this is Horseman country. You know, they loved Arn. And, you know, Richmond, Virginia is firmly implanted in Jim Crockett Promotions wheelhouse, if you will. So, you know, the Horsemen are over huge. Arn more so than Benoit. You know, Arn got a huge reaction.
Well, in this match, I noted, too, how, you know, this is the first time we've seen Chris Benoit in a match on Nitro since you and I started doing this podcast, right? I can't remember. I mean, we had seen him in TV packages with the build with the Kevin Sullivan match at Great American Bash. So I'm glad that from here forward, we're going to be getting a nice dose of Chris Benoit because we're going to be seeing him a lot more.
How nasty was his face?
Oh, man, and we'll get to it later, but Sullivan's was just as messed up.
Right.
I mean, it speaks to how tough. I mean, that match was that was a stiff match. So.
Oh yeah, we talked about how stiff and how snug they worked that match, and their faces were proof of it.
No, it absolutely was. I like this match. I thought for a tag match, going back once again to talking about how good tag team wrestling in WCW was at the time. You could just pair up two horsemen, tag team right there, legit.
Arn and Benoit cut a promo at the end of the match on Kevin Sullivan. Arn called the deal with Sullivan a business deal, and now there's only room for 4 horsemen, and now they're at full strength. Benoit has proven himself. They've got Mongo, so now they have 4 horsemen for the first time in a long time. And kind of echoes what Flair said in his promo. Up next, you had Big Bubba, John Tenta continuing their feud that was not settled at the Great American Bash. What'd you think of this one?
Just much of the same as I've talked about, 2 big guys having a big man type of match. I didn't like there was a spot at some point where John Tenta's legs, his crotch is kind of aimed toward where the pole is, and Big Bubba, it just, I guess he takes both of his legs, falls back to try to get him in the groin area there. I remember that not being a very good spot at all. Like you said, I mean, they didn't settle it at Great American Bash, so they're going to draw this out a little further. I don't like that John Tenta still doesn't have entrance music.
Oh, I liked that he didn't have it. I thought it was good.
It's funny.
That he didn't have entrance music. He was kind of rebelling against the fact that he was a character. Now he's a man. He doesn't need entrance music. He's kind of in a identity crisis, if you will.
Yeah, but I just feel like he was a respected enough talent. Give the man some damn entrance music.
Yeah.
I guess that would have cost WCW a little money, I suppose. But you get Jimmy Hart involved. He comes out with the megaphone, and John Tenta just kills him. Pins Big Bubba for the 3. Had the legs up on the ropes.
I thought that was stupid to have the leg on the ropes after he had hit him with 2 finishers.
It didn't seem necessary, did it?
No. I loved the post-match, though. Loved it.
With the loaded sock.
Yes, he slaps the shit out of him with that sock.
Dude,
I mean,
it looked like, honestly, it looked like some of the loaded socks I used to make, and when I would hit my brothers with them. But I would just get a sock, ball up the other sock, stuff it in there, and that would be the loaded sock. I wasn't sure.
Well, essentially, that's what he did. Like, at the very end of it, it had like a tennis ball or another sock inside of it. And at the bottom, if you go back and you watch it, Big Bubba grabs the end of it and he holds like all of the coins in his hands and he's slapping Tenta. He hits him in the face like at least 3 or 4 good times.
It looked like it hurt like hell.
It looked great. I mean, if you're a younger guy, you know how we were watching it, 10, 11 years old, I thought it could have been really well done. Thinking that he's just dying. And, you know, I remember him having like an eye patch because he got hit in the eye, basically. But, I mean, it looked good. I really enjoyed it. I laughed when it happened. I was like, holy shit, what a hit.
No, I bought into it 100%. I thought it looked great. I was like, what exactly is in this sock? And then he
drops the coins down.
I'm like, okay, so he really is laying there writhing in pain. That had to hurt.
Yeah, I loved it. Up next, you got Macho Man Ric Flair. Mean Gene has Macho backstage. loved this promo from Macho Man. He opens, he says, "Usually my plan is no plan." And then he kind of goes into what he's going to do. And then Mean Gene, being the consummate professional, says, have you seen any, special help for your mental problems? And he said, yeah. Macho said he saw a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they said that he was OCD. One cool dude. I thought it was really funny.
It was classic Mean Gene and Macho Man. I'd like to think that maybe Macho Man had a comfortability with Mean Gene. They had so many great promos over the years. I'll get bored and I'll just YouTube.
Oh, they did.
Old Gene and Macho promos.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes you get two guys together that just strike gold and they make sense together, and Gene and Macho just do. It's because they're two juxtaposing characters, and it just works every time.
Yeah, and I mean, they'd been around each other for almost decades in WWF. So they had that, like you said, the comfort between the two characters, and, it made for good promos. It's kind of like, with Hogan and Mean Gene. I mean, let me tell you something, Mean Gene. I mean, that's a iconic phrase. And Macho in the back, and, Elizabeth or Queen Sherry. It's just a lot of, old promos from the early to mid to late 80s and early 90s. Mean Gene was there.
Well, and I love that Macho Man is now reinstated, and we're going to see him a lot more on Nitro going forward. Not unlike what I was talking about earlier with Benoit. We get two really great talents here that we're going to get to see on Nitro and get to preview for weeks and months to come. Two guys that are no longer with us, but no doubt very respected talents. Glad we get both those guys back.
Up next was the Macho Man Flair match itself. Decent fire for the match, although one thing, and I guess I'm kind of nitpicking here, I don't know that you would agree with me. I think I would have liked Macho Man to have run after Flair from the beginning. Like, as soon as Flair's music hits, Macho hits him in the aisle. As soon as Macho comes out, he runs straight to the announcer's booth to get after Heenan, and has Heenan running around. I think it would have built into that fact that, Macho's kind of unhinged a little bit. If you're so upset at somebody for stealing your wife and spending your alimony, are you really going to wait in the ring for them to come out and not come into the ring and cut a promo, run you down a little bit, and you're in the ring and you take a mic too? I just thought that kind of disengaged me as a fan. I was like, well, if that happened to me, I would have hit that sumbitch right when he was coming down the ramp. Those girls scattered, and I'm spearing him into the ramp, and we're brawling in the entranceway.
Well, great.
If that's me,
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I didn't think about it while I was watching it, but hearing you explain it, it does make sense. And there is a storytelling element to a match. And I think that would have been a good storytelling element to have added.
WWE does a terrible job of it these days. It's like, well, if I'm running you down and saying that you're a piece of shit and I had sex with your wife and all this stuff, like, are you going to come sprinting out of the back, or are you going to let them play your music and come out holding a mic and kind of, jostle out? No, you're going to sprint out, screw my music. I'm coming to destroy you.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of realism that I want to see, because it's a human condition that the older you get, you've been wronged by someone. It might not be to where someone has stolen your wife and spent your alimony, obviously, but you can imagine that maybe your girlfriend cheated on you or something, and the guy she cheated on you with, and that anger, or something as little as the guy cuts you off in traffic and you have a little road rage. You could imagine being like, okay, we're going to it. I think it kind of disengages you that I'm going to cut a promo and tell you that I'm going to kick your ass like he does here. Macho, we know he's already unhinged. It just kind of, I don't know, it kind of disengaged me from it.
I love the Flair quote.
Whole.
I love the Flair quote when he's promoting against him. The every man experienced pain, agony, and divorce as he's kissing on the hand and arm of Miss Elizabeth. I thought that was really funny. And then at that point, that's when Macho Man gets the mic and says, I'm about to kick your ass. And sure enough, the men are going at it. They still have their entrance clothing on.
Yeah.
They keep that on.
Flair still has his robe and for quite some time. Match was okay. I mean, it was just kind of all over the place like you'd expect. I thought that, if you take away the way that they started fighting, if you take the microphones out of it, it was really good, really well done.
Well, if we're going to stick with a nitpicky theme on this match, I hated how they took a commercial break during this match. I mean, you have advertisers and people you have to take care of, period, the end. There's no getting away from that, but why not go to commercial during John Tenta Big Bubba or go to commercial
I don't think it was long enough. I don't think that match was long enough to have a commercial in it.
It might not, but anything but these two legends and their hot feud, and we've already talked about how they had been feuding for so many years. They take 2 commercial breaks during this match. I mean, hour number 2, this began hour number 2, but I felt like they could have taken a commercial maybe during a different match. I mean, these two guys are absolute and total legends, incredibly well respected, and I enjoyed the match a lot. It was very Macho Man Flair. It was very Horseman in the way it ended.
Yeah, I mean, you have the ref bump, then Macho gets the low blow, hits 2 elbows, Horseman run in, Mongo levels the hit that kind of ends Macho's hope spot because Macho dispatches he dispatches Benoit and kind of fends him off and then is going after Flair and then gets smoked in the back by the briefcase.
And those shots look good, by the way.
Oh yeah, they looked really good.
The one to the head, looked. I mean, I'd rather have take a chief sock to the eye than that damn metal briefcase to the head. Not the first.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of adds to the fact that they didn't really protect guys' heads back then.
Oh yeah, no, we would see Macho Man take a lot more shots like that going forward. There's one in particular I'm thinking of right this minute inside my little cranium that Hogan would deliver to his ass here in the next several weeks that I cannot wait to talk about. It's one of the better chair shots that I can remember. But anyway, we're getting away from the match a little bit. I wrote it down right here. Very fun match. I had a good time during this.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was good. My only complaint was the way in which it started.
Yeah. I love how Macho Man takes Flair over there to his VIP section. He's shoving vegetables in his face and opens up the champagne.
Schiavone comments, he's like, I wonder if Flair's enjoying his vegetable plate tonight. I think Schiavone's super, super underrated as a commentator. I don't know if I've said that before, and if I haven't, then shame on me. But I love Tony Schiavone.
I did an interview at a radio station about, I guess this was 4 years ago. I was still living in Birmingham, and the guy that was interviewing me, we couldn't help. We kept talking wrestling. I've never had. That's all we did the whole interview. And he had told me about how he had seen emails of there's the body of the email, and then you have all the people that the email's to, and he saw Tony Schiavone's name in it. So undoubtedly Schiavone is still doing things.
Yeah, he's a radio broadcaster for, it might be the Gwinnett Braves. He said AA or AAA affiliate for the Atlanta Braves. And so, I know he lives in that area.
Yeah, he's a Georgia fan. I saw a documentary not long ago where he's wearing a red and black Georgia. I mean, he has ties to the area. I'd love to come up with some sort of wonderful excuse to meet him, run into him, etc. A guy can dream, I suppose. We get another Mean Gene segment with the Taskmaster Jimmy Hart and the Giant. Sullivan's face is jacked up 7 ways to Sunday. Is that how the saying goes, Charles?
Sure.
Okay. Well, no. How does the saying go?
I don't really know. I don't know what saying you're
It's something
talking
you used to
about.
always say it.
6 ways to Sunday.
So I guess so. It's 6 ways to Sunday. Sullivan's face is just all jacked up.
Oh yeah, it's jacked up. I mean, we saw Benoit's earlier, and Sullivan's was just as bad.
Giants promoing. You know, his promos.
I didn't like this segment at all.
I didn't either.
like Kevin.
I didn't either.
I dislike Kevin Sullivan. His promos are so rambly that they just kind of. I'm just so disengaged. He's like Hogan and this guy and this other guy, and I'm like, hurry the hell up, dude. Just let Mean Gene talk.
Yeah, and Giants saying some corny things, and his promos aren't very good today. Of the big
No, they're
shows. They were better during his WCW run, but they were still just kind of cheesy. I mean, you could buy into how the Giant was this big menacing badass back then, but you weren't going to get there via his promos. It was simply by his look and his presence and his size.
And athleticism in the ring.
Sure. No, that was absolutely it. So, not the best Dungeon of Doom segment I'd seen.
Yeah, once Kamala was out of the Dungeon of Doom, I'm done with it.
Dude, you saw the movie Mr. Nanny, didn't you?
Mm-mm.
No, Hulk Hogan?
Nope. I mean, I know who's in it. I've just never seen
Well,
it.
at the very beginning, he's having a bad dream. He's having a nightmare. And he's in the middle of the ring in his street clothes, and a bunch of different wrestlers are just kicking him, garbing, stomping, etc. One of them's Kamala.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you go IMDb James Harris, if you get Kamala's, you get his one little tiny little part that comes up in Mr. Nanny.
A little cup of coffee that he had in Mr. Nanny.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love Kamala, man. I miss that guy. I hate that he doesn't have legs anymore.
I know, man.
WWE's never gonna bring him out on TV because he's gonna have to be in a wheelchair and shit. So, I mean,
what do you think are his chances of getting into the Hall of Fame at any point? I think he's worthy.
I think he does. Yeah, I think he deserves it. But I don't know, based on some of the stuff that we saw on YouTube about him with his action figures and his anger toward the company, that he'll get in. I mean, he should already have been in.
I agree. He's absolutely very worthy of going in. And I think, when you get a guy like him who's in the shape he's in, he's not in a very good state of mind and hadn't been in a long time. Like you and I would keep up with his latest goings on while we were living in Birmingham together. Like you said, the YouTube clips and all that. Having him go into the Hall of Fame would be such a great way for him to go off into the sunset.
Yeah, I hope that they get him in before he dies, because I think the whole posthumous Hall of Fame thing is just really sad, and it's kind of a black mark on the business that so many of these guys are dying off kind of young, and his isn't from, partying and drug use and that kind of stuff. It's, health related with his, he had an infection in his feet from diabetes and that kind of stuff. But, I mean, you got to see that for him. I think that would be a very, very big honor. And I'm sure he would tell some great stories, and hopefully he would sing Have Another Drink of Wine, because it's a great song. If you haven't heard it, YouTube it. It's very, very amusing. If it doesn't brighten your day, then you have no soul. Good old Casio keyboard and boom, 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 boom. I might put it in this. I might put it in this damn show just so people will hear it.
Put it in the outro.
Oh yeah,
just put it in the outro, dude.
Instead of the Horseman, we'll put Kamala, and I'll even put Kamala as like the picture.
Hey, you know what?
For, SoundCloud version.
I'm absolutely at Hey, if the WWE's not going to give the man his due, then we at a combined weight will give the man his due.
Everybody, grab somebody.
Satellite love this moaning and groaning.
Good stuff, man.
It is fact.
Speaking
doesn't
of
brag say you are a piece of shit.
speaking of good stuff, let's get back to Nitro, talking about Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Dean Malenko, cruiserweight title.
Well, if I may, right before we get to that point, we get another Glacier promo, but this time, what makes it different is that you get to see his, like, parts of his ring attire. You get to see his face for the first time. This is the first time they've done this, and I think we need to check our dates again on when exactly he debuts. I think it's a little earlier than what you had found. And I don't know where I'm getting that information. Well, no, somebody's sending me that information from the back.
Well, it says July 96 on the promos, but I don't think that he actually debuts then.
Okay. Well, and things change in this business, and it could be that was when it was supposed to be, and because of maybe the NWO storylines, etc., that it was then pushed back some. That very well could be the case.
Up next, we had Rey Mysterio Jr., Dean Malenko, cruiserweight title return match from the Great American Bash. Malenko had won the night before with his feet on the ropes. Gene in a awful pre-match interview with Rey Mysterio Jr. Rey, never known for his promoing ability. But they'd stolen the show, in my opinion, and in your opinion as well, the night before. This match was pretty good. Loved their back and forth. This was that cruiserweight, undercard, mid-card stuff that kept you going in Nitro. You would see tons of great matches underneath the NWO WCW feud that would main event everything going forward. And this was just kind of part of that.
It was a pretty wretched promo right before.
Terrible.
It was so bad. He contradicted himself really badly. I could tell that Mysterio was uncomfortable with the segment in the first place. Gene had brought up how Malenko had his feet on the ropes, and Mysterio says something to the effect of, his feet were on the ropes, and I don't like that. But then he goes on to say, Malenko's a very professional guy. I said,
I respect him, and
that's very contradictory. Yeah, he had his feet on the ropes. Yeah, of course you don't like that, but he's a very professional guy. I mean, come on. If you're uncomfortable with it, prepare something beforehand and have it like 3/4 memorized or half memorized, whatever you can do to help yourself in these situations.
Make it sound better than what it did.
I mean, talk with Mean Gene right before the segment. He's a professional. He can help you along with the shit. It was really bad, but a good match. Those two aren't going to give you a bad match. Love the Hurricane Rana from the top of the rope to the outside that Mysterio Jr. puts on Malenko. And I like that Malenko won clean. Had he cheated twice,
he won clean.
Had he cheated twice, when you have a champion cheat on pay-per-view and then the following show, or 2 Nitros in a row or 2 Raws in a row in the WWE's case, suddenly you have a weak-looking champion.
Yeah, and I think it's a good booking decision to have him say, well, the night before he needed to put his feet on the ropes, but not tonight. And it kind of legitimizes Malenko there, and this kind of says, all right, well, this is not going to be a feud. We're going to move Malenko away from Rey. I love Malenko's powerbomb on Rey was so much impact. I loved it. And then we get Malenko gets the win with the reverse DDT. Then we move on to the main event. Scott Steiner, who had gotten a little beat down from Harlem Heat earlier in the night, goes up against the Giant. Steiner comes in with bad ribs. That's kind of the story of the match. Giant works on him pretty much the whole match. Giant gets the win. Steiner hits him with one of those wooden chairs that we talked about in our previous Nitro retrospect. But I would not want to get hit by one of those things. They looked very, very sturdy. Not that aluminum chairs aren't sturdy, but, it just looks like it would hurt pretty good. I thought this was kind of a nothing match to main event the show.
No, we would have so many better main events on Nitro going forward, especially post Bash at the Beach, but I didn't think it was the best way to this particular Monday Nitro, while I liked it, not a bad show by any means, but an anticlimactic main event. And then just after this, we're going to get our announcement of the top 6 men from WCW, and then the drawing from those 3 of who would represent them at Bash at the Beach. Even that was kind of an anticlimactic segment in itself.
Yeah, I didn't think they did a very good job with that. In hindsight, I don't really think I watched this show back then as a kid because I don't really remember it. You know, you'll remember things, kind of have a deja vu moment when you're rewatching it. But with this, I mean, I think it's the way that they planned out the show was very indicative, in my opinion, of so many Nitros and how wrestling in the main event area had become secondary, and it was all about angles and, you know, forwarding to next week. And with the Team WCW announcement, them announcing the guys, I thought it would have been really, really good to have them play their music and them come out and then cut a little promo and then be done. That's the way you go off the show. And I understand you don't want to have the Outsiders come out and Hall and Nash clash with these guys, but maybe have those guys, you know, make an appearance at the end, and that's how you go off the air instead of, you know, Shivani and Heenan talking about it.
I agree 100%. There should have been a lot more production value involved with the announcement. You could have done what you explained, or you could have had something that mirrors a lot of what we see these days with contract signings. You know, you get the table out there, you get the contracts, you have Shivani, or I guess really Mean Gene in this case, in the middle of the ring, inviting the Outsiders out there. I will make note of this. Mean Gene, he finally refers to Hall and Nash as the Outsiders.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say
but
next.
Back to my thought, you invite them reluctantly out there. They come out with no entrance music to a smattering of matters and booze.
See, I don't think that it would be good to bring out the Outsiders. I thought they did a good job of keeping them off this show.
But just after you bring them out, you then do what you talked about. You get the Luger, Savage, and Sting out there with their music. They promo a little bit. They sign. There's so much more they could have done, I guess, is the moral of this story.
Yeah, I don't think you bring out the Outsiders. I think they did a good job about keeping them off, but I think you might have, say, bring the WCW guys out for sure to at least cut a promo or something short and say, hey, you know, we're coming. Get ready. You declared war. We're answering it. Here's our guys. I mean, you know, they'll do that in next episodes, but why not do it now on this one?
It goes against WCW Nitro protocol to have this, like you've talked about it a lot, like they're closing out the show. Oh my God, we're out of time. We got to go. This was not that way. This is the only Nitro that you and I previewed that I'm not just salivating for the next one.
Well, Shivani mentioned earlier in the show that they had the top 6 win-loss records and were in a drawing, and the 6 guys were Hogan, Sting, Luger, Flair, the Giant, and Macho Man. And as you mentioned, Mean Gene calls them the Outsiders. And I think it would have been good to say, you know, our 3 guys are Lex Luger, and then Luger comes out, and then Macho Man comes out, and then Sting. And you kind of build to that crescendo where your franchise player is the last guy you see, and Sting says, hey, you wanted 3 guys. Here are the 3 guys. Who's your 3rd guy? Or, you know, we'll see you in Daytona, something to that effect. And Heenan echoes the name the Outsiders as well. So that kind of comes from this point. From this point on, I guess they'll be known as the Outsiders. Very apropos that Mean Gene's the first one to call them the Outsiders.
You damn right it is.
I wonder, and I don't really know this, that did he call them the Outsiders? Was that kind of like a planned name, and then they just kind of took that as, you know, we're going to be the Outsiders? Or, you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
That's a good question. In watching the promo, it just seemed like something Mean Gene threw out there that now WCW brass decided to take and run with. That's really how it seemed. Kind of like how Arn Anderson with holding up the 4 fingers for the first time was something he did in an improvisational act, very impromptu, but it stuck. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah, and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse kind of thing, too.
That's how it felt to me.
Totally inadvertent.
But at the same time, had it been a planned thing, Mean Gene is so good at what he does, he could make such a thing seem like it was an accident. But no, it felt very impromptu.
I think, based on what we know about WCW, I don't think that they knew what to call them yet, maybe.
Sure.
Because, I mean, you hear them tell it that Hogan kind of glommed his way on once, that they didn't have an idea for the definite third guy until, like, after Hall and Nash had already debuted.
Well, at some point, Hogan is quoted as saying to Eric Bischoff at the idea of turning heel, man, until you've walked down the street in these red and yellow boots, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing it, but in other words saying, man, I've been a babyface my whole career. I'm beloved, red and yellow, prayers and vitamins, Hulkamania. It is a thing of beauty that I've been living now for 20 years, and you want to turn me heel? At what point was that conversation had? Because that's something that had been brought to Bischoff's attention. Look, man, until you've walked in these red and yellow boots, you don't know what it's like. So was this, though, right before Bash at the Beach, or when it was first talked about that Hogan would even jump the WWE bandwagon onto WCW? Because at some point, like, you've talked a lot about him glomming his way into the storyline, but I don't know, like, how much of a conspiracy theory is that? How much truth is there, I guess?
I think I think there's definite truth to it based on what guys have said, that he glommed his way into the New World Order idea. That he was never supposed to be the third guy. It was never initially supposed to be him, and then he kind of gloms his way into it. I don't know at what point he glommed his way into it, but he did. I mean, it had to have been after they debuted and they saw how big it was. Because WCW was not known for their planning going forward. I mean, you could see that on, how they had storyline holes here, or the random guys that would end up in the NWO.
Right.
So, I mean, their long-term planning was not the thing of lore.
This is very true. Well, and then you could see that especially once guys like Hogan and Nash are able to take control of their own story, their own booking. But anyway.
Yeah, that'd be something that maybe I'll find something about that somewhere.
I think, the way I've read about it, there was a little bit of hesitation on Hogan's part. At what point the hesitation took place, either when it was initially when he was in talks with Bischoff about leaving WWF to WCW, or if it was around this time, like, dude, no. So.
And I want to say that Hall and Nash had talked about how they had not had a real idea of who the third guy was the whole time. And they had, like, kind of talked about who it was and all that kind of stuff. Maybe I'll find it somewhere.
All right.
All right, you got anything else?
No, shoot me a follow on Twitter and Instagram, being_large. It's been a good time, Charles.
Good show. As always, kind of look back at the old WCW days, Monday Nitro. Our next show will be looking at the June 24th, 1996 Nitro. Counting down we got 2 shows left before Bash at the Beach.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. We talk a lot about this show on the show about historical events and dominoes that fall, leading to this storyline of it being what we now know as the New World Order. And the Bash at the Beach is no doubt a very historic pay-per-view around this period of time. So I'm looking forward to watching it all unfold for sure.
Yep. Can't wait. War Eagle. All right, well, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for clicking the link that brought you here. This is At a Combined Weight. Make sure that you join us next week to talk about June 24th, 1996. This has been At a Combined Weight.
Everybody grab somebody. Everybody grab somebody. Let us all have a good time. Everybody grab somebody. All right, here we go. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Let's move the evening through the morning. The satellite loving, moaning and groaning. Let's move the evening through the morning. The satellite loving, moaning and groaning. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Take off your hat, take off your shoes. You say you're gonna love me, ain't that good news? Take off your hat, take off your shoes. You say you're gonna love me, ain't that good news? Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Do whatever now, what's on your mind. Do whatever now, what's on your mind. It's your time to shine. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load on, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load on, just let yourself be. All right. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load on, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load on, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load on, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Give me plenty loving little country punkin'. So when I die, it'll be about something. Give me plenty loving little country punkin'. So when I die, it'll be about something. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be. Let's move the evening through the morning. The satellite loving, moaning and groaning. Take off your hat, take off your shoes. You say you're gonna love me, ain't that good news? Give me plenty loving little country pumpkin. When I die, it'll be about something. Have a little drink of wine with me. Take a load off, just let yourself be.